way from the US of A. Let's go.
Yeah, sorry guys, you're gonna have to bear with another American accent for 15 more minutes. We're going first to get it out of the way. Yeah, so I work at Speakeasy. We are a company focused on SDK generation. So we take in an open API specification that describes your API, and we turn it into client libraries in 10 plus languages. So maybe a raise of hand, actually. How many people know what an SDK is, have worked with an SDK? All right, well, there we go. That's good. A lot of talks I give, that's not the case. How many people have had the misfortune of working with open API? Less, yeah. All right, cool. Well, this disgusting piece of YAML that's on the screen, this is an open API specification. It is extremely pedantic, super annoying to get right, but if you invest in building a good one, it unlocks a lot of potential tooling. You can use it to automate creation of documentation for your API, testing, SDKs, which is obviously what we do. So it is worth getting right. And today I'm just going to be talking a bit, well actually I'm going to talk first about why we're a code gen product that is actually not AI based. And the reason for that is that when you're working with APIs, the very worst thing that you can do is be non-deterministic. The most valuable thing you can do is be consistent. Like even if you make technically poor choices, if you make them consistently with the interface of your API, it's going to be a lot easier than if you make good choices, but it's different all over the place. So consistency is extremely important. Not breaking the public interface and doing the same thing over and over again every time you update your API is really important. And those are two things that AI kind of struggles with right now, to be completely honest. But obviously this is a talk about AI, and there is an AI feature that we've been building. And what we found is really useful is when AI is paired with deterministic code gen. So we started by building a deterministic code generation platform, and we've now laid AI on top of it. And specifically what we use the AI for is altering the open API specification. It's, again, something that not a lot of people invest in getting right, but the benefits are huge if you do. And AI works really well when you kind of artificially constrain like the vocabulary that the AI has to deal with. And that's kind of exactly what OpenAPI is. It's a constrained vocabulary. And so you can kind of pass this into an AI agent, and you can have it make suggested improvements. And then when you layer those improvements into the spec, you can get a really good SDK. So I am going to show you guys how that works. I'm going to put this down for a sec. Unless Alex wants to. All right, so first we're going to start by creating an SDK, and I'm using Discord's OpenAPI specification. So this is just a subset. They have a really big API, but I've kind of pulled a subset of like 10 endpoints. We're just going to make an SDK for that. And so they kind of have a few different endpoints in here. They've got things like channels. They've got some messages, invites, kind of stuff that you would expect for a chat application. So let's hope the demo gods are favorable. And this is obviously, this is Speakeasy. This is our little CLI, Open API. Oh, actually, sorry, I called this discord.yaml. All right. Give your SDK a name. So this is kind of like what is it going to look like when people are interacting with the SDK? So let's call this Discord, discord.doThing. That looks good. I'm going to do TypeScript. These are the different languages that we support. Package isn't super relevant now because I'm not publishing this, but if I were, I would want it to be called Discord. And I'm going to write that to an output directory. And yeah, let's hope the demo gods are with me. Kind of what?
Can you make it just zoom in?
Oh yeah, just a little bit bigger?
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Are you able to see the VS Code okay? Cool. All right. So the SDK has been generated. That's a good step. Now we're just going to make sure that it compiles. And we can kind of start peeking into what's been, okay, cool. So it looks like it did, and this is our platform, and this kind of just shows you a summary of what's been generated. But let's focus on the actual code. So this is the SDK that's been created. You can see it's got documentation. It's got the source code. Go into the source code. It's got models for all the different kind of elements inside of the Discord API. Let's actually just look at the README, because I think the README is the nicest way to just get a sense of what's been created. So yeah, so you can basically see we've created a Discord package. The Discord package includes these methods. So you basically have a method resource with a get, delete, update, list, etc. And you can call it. You can discord.getMessage. You can pass in a channel ID, message ID, and it'll work. Now, if you were using this SDK, you might be like, yeah, this is pretty good. But one thing that you might want to see is a more resource-oriented kind of view. So instead of discord.getMessage, discord.message.get. So kind of have that resource-based orientation. That's a pretty common thing. And the way that that's controlled in the OpenAPI specification is through the concept of tags and operation IDs. And in the case of Discord, they have these operation IDs, create message, and they actually don't have tags, which is why you're kind of seeing everything get slanted into that one SDK object. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Speakeasy suggest. I've kind of pulled out, this is basically the prompt that's powering this feature. And it's basically telling the AI that it is a developer that works with OpenAPI specifications, kind of a shitty existence. But it also tells it how to do a good job of working with OpenAPI specifications. So it wants it to standardize, wants operation IDs to follow a certain pattern. And yeah, that's really the prompt. So let me go over here. And I'm going to run Speakeasy suggest. And we're basically going to feed in the Discord spec, and it's going to generate some suggestions for us, and it's going to write them into an overlay file. I guess one interesting aspect, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of OpenAPI, but the overlays are basically a way of editing OpenAPI specs, but keeping the edits isolated in a separate file. And this is, again, something that actually works really well for AI, because you can basically separate like what's been done by your team and what's been done by the AI, and keep the AI stuff kind of isolated. And then if this is part of like a pipeline that's producing SDKs, you can actually take the overlays or the edits the AI has done, and every time there's an update to the API, you can reapply the same edits. So you kind of get that, you take the non-deterministic element and you make it deterministic. So now I've cheated a bit and I've kind of set up a little workflow already. So I'm just going to do Speakeasy run, and if this goes well, it's going to take in the edits the AI has created. Well, that's not good, but we'll see what happens. And it's going to recreate the SDK with better operation IDs. And I'll just go over here just to get ready in anticipation that it's going to work. Yes, it has generated. All right. And let's wait for it to compile. Cool. And it has compiled. So now let's go look at the README. Let's get rid of that. Let's open the preview. So yeah, so now you can see that, so now we have a channels object. We have multiple channels objects. Well, that's not quite right. That's fine. I have a backup that I could run, but I won't. But yeah, you basically can understand now that it's following that nice pattern. So discord.channels.getMessage. So just a little bit more idiomatic. And you can kind of repeat this process for all sorts of common mistakes that exist in OpenAPI specifications. Like it could be adding examples so that you can make the code snippets that get created more detailed. operation IDs, and much, much more. Adding error codes, that's another really common one. Most people don't take the time. You can go and create error codes pretty easily using AI. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. And I guess like looking forward, I think one thing that I'm particularly interested in seeing how this plays out is like, if I look at the future, I do feel like the time of developers spending time building integrations with APIs it's probably got a time span on it. I don't think it's that interesting. And so I think the kind of logical question becomes, what does an API integration look like if the primary consumer is going to be an AI system? And where do SDKs fit into that or not? It's an existential question for me. Maybe nobody else has thought about it, but I think it's likely that SDKs do stick around. I think in the same way that SDKs are useful for developers, they create a nice layer of abstraction. If it has type safety, then it provides nice feedback on what's broken if you create a type incorrectly. And I think those same features will be beneficial to AI when AI is trying to build integrations with a system. So I think that this is probably only going to get more useful in the future, but definitely curious what other people think. If people have opinions, I'd love to hear them now or afterwards. Come find me. Yeah, thanks. Actually, probably shouldn't have closed out of that.
Any questions? You've got 3 minutes left.
Cool. Yeah.
So essentially, the Speakeasy is some kind of way better implementation of OpenPay generator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do people are coding this Speakeasy? Is it part of their CI/CD flow? Do they just commit to their schemas and then it's automatically generated?
Yeah, so basically we are part of a CI/CD workflow. Like you can run it locally if you want, and there's some large enterprises that choose to do it that way. But most of the time we run as a GitHub action. We're just checking every 15 minutes for changes to your spec. When a change to the spec is detected, it triggers a new run of the pipeline. Or if you're making multiple SDKs, different actions run in your SDK repos. It regenerates the SDK, checks for compilation, tags the code owner to approve, and then merges and then publishes the package. So, yeah.
This AI on stuff, there is one problem. It will generate some kind of backward incompatible change.
So it actually, because it creates, this is even uglier YAML. But basically, what's happening is that we're isolating the edits that are happening to the OpenAPI specification, and so those can be relayed over and over again whenever there's a change to the API. So unless you're completely deleting an endpoint or something, these kind of changes can be rerun, and so it doesn't break it. Yeah. Cool. I think there's another question. Oh. Whoever. One more.
We saw your system prompt and parts of what you were using AI for. Can you talk more about the foundational model and differences you saw when you switched up the model? Or
Yeah.
using the code generator that you get?
Yeah. So again, we're using the AI with our code generator, so they kind of work together. But we're using OpenAI. I was going to say OpenAPI. Yeah, we're using OpenAI, and we're just hitting their API in the background, with different models. We tried different stuff, but to be completely honest, the last time we tested was about 6 months ago, and the space is moving so quickly that it's probably time for us to do another test, and see what's performing best now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
So, hands together.